Manifest divine miracles today. Activate love, abundance, and heavenly blessings in 3 days. In the heart of Willow Creek, a town where whispers of faith echoed through every cornfield, a fervent hope flickered to life. Eleanor, a strong-willed widow, found herself clinging to this flicker, her heart heavy with the weight of grief and fear for her gravely ill son, Jonah. Just last year, she'd watched as the love of her life slipped from her fingers, leaving only memories and an unbearable void. Now, with Jonah struggling to hold on to life, Eleanor's spirit burned bright against the encroaching shadows of despair around her. It was an evening drenched in candlelight at the local Methodist church. The familiar warmth of hymns filled the air, mingling with the scent of incense and the whispered murmurs of prayer. Pastor Michael, a man known for his deep, soul-stirring messages, gathered the congregation with his eyes shining like the stars above. In just 3 days, those who act with unwavering faith, love, and unity shall witness divine blessings like never before, he proclaimed, his voice echoing through the sacred hall. Eleanor felt a spark within her chest ignite. With a hint of skepticism tugging at her heart, she stepped forward, drawn by the lingering promise of hope. As the congregation buzzed with excitement and doubt, Eleanor rallied her neighbors. "We must stand together," she urged, eyes shining with determination as the prayer chain unfurled. Fervent prayers began to rise, filled with a sincerity deep enough to shake the very heavens. Yet there were murmurs of skepticism, questions hanging in the air like storm clouds. "Is this promise merely words?" some whispered, fear creeping into the corners of their hearts. A rift emerged within their community, punctuating the beauty of connection with uncertainty. Just as unity blossomed, disaster struck. One fateful night, a tempest raged, its winds wailing like the ancient spirits of old. Eleanor found herself injured, her strength waning as Jonah's health plummeted. The familiar glimmer of hope dimmed, nearly extinguished by grief. On her knees, she cried out to the heavens raw and broken, "Please, Lord, send your miracle. Let me see your hand at work." In that desperate moment, something miraculous happened. As she prayed through the long, sleepless nights, an inexplicable peace enveloped her. Oddly enough, so did Jonah. His condition began to change, baffling the doctors who had little understanding of how hope had turned the tide. The news spread through Willow Creek like wildfire, igniting unprecedented waves of unity. Neighbors once divided now joined hands, hearts lifted and prayers flowing like a rushing river. As the 3rd day approached, anticipation thickened the very air they breathed. Would they witness the miracles Pastor Michael had promised? Would bondings of love and faith heal not just Jonah, but the scars left in the town after so much loss? A collective breath hung heavily, expectant yet shadowed by doubt. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The clock ticked down, every second reverberating with unspoken questions. Was Eleanor's unwavering faith uncovered the key to the miracle? Or was she a mere vessel through whom something much greater was orchestrating this divine display? Just as uncertainty wrapped its tendrils around hope, the miraculous began to unfold, leading the entire town back towards one undeniable truth. Love, powered by faith, could conquer even the deepest despair. As dawn broke on the 3rd day, a gentle light washed over Willow Creek, illuminating every dew-kissed blade of grass and every joyful flower. The air felt charged, buzzing with an electricity of hope and anticipation. Eleanor stood at her kitchen window, her heart racing. She could almost hear the whispers of the town, mingling with prayers rising like smoke towards the heavens. The entire community had come together, united in their yearning for healing and miracles. Jonah stirred in his bed, a faint smile teasing the corners of his lips. Eleanor rushed to his side, her hands trembling as she brushed a lock of hair from his forehead. "Good morning, my sweet boy," she murmured, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and hope. She already felt the shift. Jonah was stronger today. "You hold on to me, Jonah. We are going to witness something beautiful today." Later that morning, the church was filled to the brim. Each pew overflowed with congregants, old and young, seasoned believers and new seekers. Pastor Michael stood at the altar, his voice ringing out with a rich warmth that engulfed the room. It is our faith, my dear friends, that has carried us this far. Today, we stand on the brink of divine intervention. Together, we shall raise our voices and our hearts in worship. A rush of energy surged through Eleanor as she joined hands with her friends. The melodies of worship filled the air, creating an atmosphere thick with spirit. The lyrics of the hymns harmonized with the rhythm of hopeful hearts, each note echoing the drive for divine blessings. The congregation swayed as one, blinking away tears, their collective spirit lifting like the sun breaking through the clouds. Miracles come to those who believe, Pastor Michael declared, raising his arms. When we gather in love, the Lord hears us. Eleanor felt a wave of warmth wash over her. It was as if the very essence of love had enveloped them, a divine hug that filled every crevice of uncertainty with light. She turned to look at Jonah, who seemed to bask in the echoes of faith around him. His eyes sparkled with life that had long been dimmed. But as the worship soared, doubts clung to the edges of minds. What if they were meant to confront disappointment once more? What if the promise felt so close slipped away again? Eleanor sensed the scratching of fear creeping back into her heart. Yet she remembered her earlier cries to God and the inexplicable peace that had followed. The congregation began sharing testimonies, one by one, recounting moments of their own divine encounters. A woman spoke of her cancer diagnosis turning into remission. A man described a burden lifted after years of struggle. Each story painted a picture of faith's power, challenging Eleanor to trust more deeply than before. At the crescendo of worship, the room fell silent. A tangible stillness filled the air, a breath that everyone seemed to hold collectively. Suddenly, Jonah let out a soft gasp. The onlookers turned, their eyes widening. His hand moved, slowly and surely, reaching for Eleanor's. "Mom," he said, his voice as fragile as a leaf in the wind. A wave of gasps rippled through the church. Eleanor knelt, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, Jonah, I'm right here." Hope ignited in her chest. Their eyes locked, and for the first time in weeks, Eleanor felt the warmth of a miracle close enough to touch. But as quickly as the awe ensued, a thought lingered. Would it be too easy to assume this was the end of their journey? What awaited them in the next moments? With the hope of one miracle unfolding, could more revelations be on the horizon? Together, in that sacred space, they stood at the gateway to the unknown, ready to witness what God had planned next. Eleanor felt her breath hitch in her throat as Jonah's hand grasped hers. It was electric, pulsing with a life she had nearly lost. The church bristled with an energy that felt almost otherworldly. Each face reflected a blend of disbelief and wonder. She could hardly contain the gratitude swelling in her heart, spilling over in soft sobs. "Mom, I missed you," Jonah whispered, his words like a balm on her soul. The moment felt sacred, suspended in time, as a wave of joy washed over the congregation. They applauded gently, as if afraid to disrupt the beauty unfolding before them. Pastor Michael stepped forward, his face a canvas of astonishment blended with reverence. "What a miracle! What a gift we are witnessing," he proclaimed, raising his hands to the heavens. Eleanor's heart sang in response. Jonah's smile grew, and with it, hope surged through the room like a tidal wave. It was as if life itself were being breathed into the community. As the realization settled in, Eleanor could sense the cautious optimism blooming around them. People began to embrace, weeping and laughing in the same breath. "Never lose faith," a voice boomed from the back. It was Mr. Thompson, the town's oldest resident. He rose, frail yet sturdy, gripping the pew to steady himself as he continued, "I've seen many miracles in my lifetime. What we have witnessed today is just the beginning of God's outpouring." Eyes shifted toward Eleanor and Jonah, as if their miracle lit a fire of expectation. She looked into the faces before her. Each one was a palette of hope, fear, and love. Then Jonah spoke again, his voice stronger now, buoyed by the energy radiating from the crowd. "It feels like everything inside me is waking up. Mom, can we tell everyone what happened?" Eleanor nodded, tears sparkling on her cheeks. "Of course, darling. You share your heart. With renewed ease, Jonah recounted the dark days filled with pain and uncertainty. But as he spoke, the clouds of doubt began to dissipate in the warmth of his faith. I was scared, but I prayed, and I felt something. It was like a light. And today, I can feel that light growing. The congregation erupted in cheers, voices mixing into a harmonious symphony of worship. Pastor Michael guided them in prayer, a collective cry for blessings and miracles to continue lighting their paths. As Eleanor watched Jonah, she felt the divine pouring from him. She closed her eyes, surrendering her heart anew. "Lord, thank you for this miracle," she whispered. "We're ready for whatever comes next." Yet just as comfort began to settle like a blanket over her fears, a small voice echoed from the back. "What about the others? What about those still hurting?" The church fell silent again, the question hanging in the air. The joy that had filled the room took a pause, replaced by a solemn gravity. It was a reality that couldn't be ignored. Many in the town were still grappling with their burdens, some even heavier than Jonah's. Eleanor felt a stirring in her spirit. Her heart raced anew, feeling a call to action. What if Jonah's healing was a sign for us to unite and seek healing for others? She mused aloud, feeling the weight of the decision. Could this miracle spark a chain reaction of divine healing across Willow Creek? Could they rally together for those still in darkness? The thought electrified the room. Eleanor turned her gaze to the congregation, passion igniting within her. "Let's be the hands and feet of God. Let's seek out those in need, share our faith, and bring hope to every corner of this town. We can be the miracle for others." The pleading murmurs began to rise again, mixing with renewed faith. Questions lingered in the air, unspoken yet critical. How would they manifest this call? What divine appointments awaited them, ready to unfold? And in that moment, as hearts joined in shared vision, they realized they stood on the precipice of something far greater than just one miracle. What would they discover together? What awaited them as they extended their hands to those still yearning for a breakthrough? The church was alive, buzzing with anticipation. Conversations swirled like leaves in the wind, voices dipping and rising with excitement. Eleanor stepped forward, feeling the gentle tug of the Spirit guiding her actions. It was a sacred time, a moment pregnant with the power to change lives. "Brothers and sisters," she began, her voice steady yet overflowing with emotion. "We have witnessed something beautiful today. Jonah's healing is not just for us to celebrate, it is a call for us to act." The congregation leaned in, hearts pulsing with hope. Eleanor continued, "What we do next will reflect the love and grace we've received. Let us not hoard this joy but share it like a wildfire, spreading warmth to every chilly corner of our town." A murmur of agreement swept through the room. Eleanor glanced around, seeking the faces she knew well. Each one held a story, a struggle, and a hope. She saw Mrs. Collins, whose son was battling addiction. She thought of the Johnsons, mourning a recent loss. Each smile before her was an invitation to take action. "Perhaps we can start small. Let's organize a day of outreach, a time where each of us can bring a friend, a neighbor, someone who's hurting. We can share our testimonies and offer a listening ear. Maybe we could even provide meals or support for those in need." Pastor Michael, ever the pillar of support, nodded enthusiastically. "That's it. We can host prayer sessions, invite those who feel lost. Let's open our doors wide and let the light flow through them." As they mapped out plans, enthusiasm rippled throughout the congregation. Each idea sparked shoots of passion, igniting a fire in everyone's hearts. More than once, Eleanor felt her chest tighten with joy as prayers rose in the air, small pockets of faith forming like stars in a midnight sky. Yet a part of her remained contemplative. The biting question whispered in her mind, would it be enough? Would their efforts truly reach those it was intended for? Suddenly, Jonah's voice broke through her thoughts. "Mom, what about the children at the community center? They need hope. We can share stories with them. Maybe even a little music. Everyone loves songs." Eleanor smiled wide. This boy's heart was a wellspring of hope, pure and untainted. Yes, that's exactly what we need, to reach the youngest among us, to plant seeds of faith and love in their hearts. As they brainstormed ways to involve the community center, Eleanor noticed Mr. Thompson raising a frail hand again. "And what of the lonely, the elderly who may never set foot in this church? We can take our miracles into their homes and hearts." Ideas flowed freely now, bursting forth like a river after a long drought. They dreamt of food drives, community concerts, and prayer walks. Each suggestion ignited the room like dry kindling, the once silent corners echoing with life. But soon, the urgency of the task weighed heavily upon Eleanor's spirit. What if they failed? What if, in this whirlwind of excitement, they overlooked someone who needed them most? "Let's keep our eyes open," she urged, "and our hearts even wider. We need to be sensitive to the Holy Spirit's guidance. It's not just about numbers or events, it's about real connections." As they bowed their heads for another prayer, Eleanor felt their hopes weaving together, a rich tapestry of intent. And deep within her, a quiet assurance replaced her anxiety. "Lord, guide us. Let our hands be instruments of your love. Show us the way." Just as the prayer concluded, the air shifted. A gust of wind rustled the window softly, as if affirming their commitment to this divine journey. What awaited them, she wondered? Would they discover something unexpected on this path to healing their community? Was there more to come that their faith had yet to reveal? The congregation rose, buoyed by a shared mission, but Eleanor couldn't shake the feeling that they were stepping into the unknown. What miracles were waiting to unfold as they took action together? The following days melded into a whirlwind of activity as the congregation buzzed with the collective energy of purpose. Each member, invigorated by Eleanor's call, began to step into their roles with enthusiasm. Ideas that had once lingered on the fringes of their hearts now danced in the open air, visible and alive. Eleanor found herself at the community center more often than not, brainstorming ways to connect with the children. The walls of that place, usually so quiet and neglected, began to feel like a canvas for hope. She envisioned bright faces illuminated by laughter, eager ears absorbing stories filled with love and kindness. Jonah, her radiant little flame, had inspired her with such clarity. "Let's gather stories from the Bible and pair them with songs," Jonah proposed during one of their many discussions. Each word he spoke sparkled with youthful enthusiasm, infecting Eleanor with a deeper passion. "Yes, music has a way of reaching souls when words sometimes fail," she replied, her heart swelling with pride. As they began to plan, word spread through the town. Friends connected with friends, whispers of healing and hope echoed down the streets. Like roots burrowing deep into the earth, the message took hold, and people began to rise. On the eve of the outreach day, Eleanor sat alone in her kitchen, flipping through a stack of papers filled with notes. Her heart raced with anticipation, yet doubt lingered in the corners of her mind. "Have I done enough?" she whispered to the stillness, gazing out at the dimming sunset. The fading light reminded her of the fleeting moments people encountered each day, moments filled with suffering, joy, and everything in between. An unexpected breeze swept through her open window, filling the air with a sweet fragrance. She inhaled deeply, letting the warmth embrace her. "Lord, please guide me through this," she prayed. The day dawned bright and clear. The church blossomed with warmth as congregants gathered, filled with expectation. Tables bore vibrant decorations and a bounty of food as cheerful voices mingled with laughter. Music played softly in the background, weaving a comforting melody through the air. As the attendees began to arrive, Eleanor felt the weight of her earlier doubts lighten. Smiles radiated from faces both familiar and new. Children darted around, their laughter ringing like bells of joy. It was a beautiful tapestry that seemed to glimmer with divine purpose. Pastor Michael stepped forward, his voice booming with enthusiasm. "Let's all gather. Today is a celebration of community, a display of God's love. Let's open our hearts wide." As hands joined in prayer, gratitude surged through the gathering like a rushing river. Eleanor could almost feel the tangible spirit amongst them, wrapping around hearts and igniting spirits. For every individual present, their feelings converged into one harmonious heartbeat filled with divine intention. But just as the service began and stories of hope poured forth, an unexpected silence blanketed the room. A woman stood at the back, her face a portrait of despair. She was a newcomer, her eyes shining with unspilled tears. Sensing her struggle, Eleanor's heart reached out. "Come forward," she beckoned gently. As the woman stepped forward, the congregation held its breath, anticipation rippling through the air. What had brought her there? What was her story? In that moment, Eleanor understood. The journey to touch lives would not just be about hosting events or sharing joy. It was about embracing the burdens that people carried. As the woman began to share her heart, Eleanor realized they were on the brink of something profound. It was about to unfold, waiting for them at the intersection of hope and healing. What depths of compassion might they plunge into together? Could they reach the hidden stories just waiting to be unveiled? The atmosphere was charged with expectancy, and she knew they were stepping into the mysterious plans God had set before them. The room was heavy with silence, an almost sacred hush enveloping the congregation as the woman spoke. Her voice trembled at first, but as she shared her story, it transformed into a river of emotion. Eleanor could see the weight of her pain spilling out, each word laced with heartache. The love in the room was palpable, everyone leaning in, their hearts mirroring the woman's struggle. "I lost my way," the woman confessed, her voice breaking like delicate glass. "I lost my husband, and then I lost myself." Each phrase seemed to puncture the silence, drawing each listener deeper into the ache of her sorrow. Eyes were glistening, hearts were stirred as silent prayers were lifted, transforming the space into a sanctuary of empathy and connection. Jonah, standing beside Eleanor, looked up at her with wide eyes. Eleanor felt her heart quake in response. Here they were, vulnerable, human, surrounded by layers of brokenness and healing. This moment felt almost sacred, a divine invitation to walk alongside one another through the valleys of life. As the woman continued, she spoke of her loneliness, how the nights felt endless, and how grief clung to her like a heavy shroud. Each word resonated with deep truth. The congregation, once filled with a festive spirit, shifted to one of deep compassion. "Is anyone here willing to embrace her heart?" Pastor Michael's voice rang out, breaking the spell of silence that had enveloped them. His question hovered in the air, a beckoning call for community, for connection, for love. Eleanor felt a stirring within her soul. "I will," she exclaimed, surprising even herself with the strength of her voice. Led by a divine pull, she walked towards the woman. With tears in her own eyes, she took the stranger's hands in her own, warmth flowing between them. "You are not alone," Eleanor said softly. "We are here with you. Lean on us while you learn to heal." As she spoke those words, a wave of murmured affirmations washed over them. "We are family. We walk together. You belong here." Each declaration wrapped around the newcomer, cocooning her in love. At that moment, people began standing up, sharing their own stories of loss and redemption, vibrant and full of hope. Unseen burdens began to lift. Echoes of personal struggles joined with the testimony of healing miracles that God had activated in their lives. Each new revelation became a thread, weaving together a tapestry of collective fortitude. Eleanor felt the presence of God wrapping around them, palpable and rich. They were a community in action, an embodiment of Christ's love. This was what faith looked like. It looked like embracing everyone, standing firm in the name of compassion, and proclaiming hope in the face of despair. Just when it seemed like healing might fill the space completely, a small child pressed through the crowd, clutching a crumpled piece of paper. With innocent determination, Jonah raised it high above his head, like an offering. "Look, I wrote a song to share." The room swelled with anticipation again, like a rising tide. Perhaps here was another moment, another divine gift waiting to be unveiled. What hymn might bubble up through the cracks of this collective heart? Could this be the spark that ignites a new wave of healing and joy? The light of laughter began to dance through the air once again, blending seamlessly with the echoes of stories shared. And as Jonah started to sing, the room swayed in response, a gentle reminder that even in the brokenness, joy could bloom anew. What transformation lay ahead in this beautiful, messy journey together? What deeper revelations awaited them as they echoed love and hope through their own lives? The melody lingered like promise, reaching out into the mystery of what lay beyond. As Jonah's sweet voice lifted, the tender notes floated through the air, wrapping around the congregation like a warm embrace. Each lyric seemed to carry the weight of unspoken hopes, carrying divine joy to the very corners of their hearts. Eleanor felt lifted, her spirit dancing with the rhythms of his innocent song. Others joined in, their voices harmonizing with Jonah's. It was as if the very walls of the room began to breathe, filled with a holy presence that connected their hearts in ways words could never describe. Laughter mixed with tears of happiness. They were all woven together in a sacred tapestry, each voice a thread connecting one soul to another. In that moment, Eleanor remembered her own story of loss, how she had felt so adrift before finding her way back to faith. She thought of the small miracles that had guided her, the whispers of hope that had always brought her back to light. She felt an urge to share herself as Jonah had, to speak of grace amid sorrow, to declare that healing was possible. "Can we share our songs of healing?" Eleanor found herself calling out, her heart racing as she voiced the thought emerging so clearly. "Can we encourage each other with our broken parts made whole?" Pastor Michael's eyes twinkled with approval. "Yes, let this be a space where vulnerability leads to strength," he encouraged, inviting others to step forward. One after another, congregants began to rise, their voices blending into a chorus of testimonies. A woman spoke of how faith had sparked in her heart as she wrestled with despair. A man shared how the love of God had guided him through addiction. Their words were painted with divine strokes of hope, demonstrating God's hand at work through all forms of brokenness. Eleanor felt her soul swelling as she listened, recognizing each story as part of her own journey. It was a beautiful reminder that they were not alone, that every heart had its struggles, but also the capacity for restoration. The air pulsed with possibility, the whispers of divine miracles around them whispering louder. Jonah, buoyed by the energy, stepped forward again, grinning widely. "And I have a second song," he announced. There was a chuckle, lightening the mood as they all responded with love. The child began to sing anew, this time with a playful bounce to the tune, sending ripples of joy through the congregation. As the last note faded, the warmth of connection filled the room. Smiles exchanged radiated like sunlight breaking through clouds, illuminating faces marked by both joy and sorrow. Just then, the newcomer, still tender from her grief, stood and spoke, her own voice now stronger, fueled by the shared love around her. "I feel like I'm beginning to see light again," she exclaimed, her face alight with hope. "I want to be part of this family. I want to sing my song too." A roar of applause embraced her, evidence that love was indeed multiplying in that sacred space. Eleanor's heart soared. This was church, healing, sharing, becoming, all tethered through the thread of love that God had woven among them. But deep inside, Eleanor felt a stirring, a whisper that there was more still to unfold. What if this gathering was just the start? What transformations would this community ignite beyond these walls? As she pondered, she heard Pastor Michael declare joyfully, "And now with faith, we will pray for those who seek miracles in their lives. What wonders will God show us as we dare to believe?" Excitement buzzed in the air. Eleanor could feel it building, an electrifying promise of divine revelation waiting to break forth. The hint of something monumental lingered, weaving through every heart, every voice preparing to call forth love, abundance, and blessings in ways they couldn't yet imagine. Would their prayers bring forth miracles they had never even thought to ask for? Eleanor closed her eyes, feeling the warmth of the room wrap around her like a divine blanket. It was a sacred moment, one that held the promise of something magnificent about to unfold. She opened herself up to the possibility that the very air they breathed was charged with the power of prayer, the unbreakable bond of love threading them all together. As the congregation settled into a hush, Pastor Michael's voice rose with authority, but also with gentleness. "Let us gather in faith. Let us invite the divine to move among us." There was a stillness in the room, an almost palpable silence, as if the walls themselves paused to listen. "Lord, we come before you with hearts that seek your touch. We ask for healing, guidance, and for miracles that may seem beyond our reach." His voice resonated, and as he prayed, Eleanor felt her spirit igniting with each sincere word. When the prayer concluded, a powerful energy pulsed through the assembly. People seemed to radiate hope, and she could see it reflected back in their faces, pure expectation. Jonah beamed, his innocence and joy a perfect mirror to the rising tide of faith among them. "Does everyone feel it?" Eleanor whispered loudly enough for those closest to hear. "The weight of promise is here." A couple nodded, and someone else replied, "It feels like the very presence of God is smiling at us." Then, without warning, a mighty voice erupted from the back of the room. "I am here." It was Samuel, a man who had come to the church just a few weeks before, burdened by years of loneliness and disillusionment. But now, something wild flickered in his eyes, as if he had encountered a long-lost friend. I was in despair, friends. I came here thinking I had nothing left, and instead I've found a family." The congregation erupted in applause, their spirits soaring higher. "I feel like chains are falling off me," he shouted, emotion flooding his voice. "Today, I declare, my heart is free." Eleanor felt tears welling up, but these weren't tears of sorrow, they were tears of overwhelming joy, of gratitude for this man's transformation. Others began to jump up, hearts ignited, speaking their own declarations. It wasn't just about sharing stories anymore. It was about proclaiming faith and openly inviting God's miracles. One by one, voices rose, louder and bolder. "I claim healing," a woman cried. "The burden is lifted," shouted a young man. Eleanor watched as love poured out. Love for one another, love for God, love that shattered doubts and fears. As the vibrant declarations transformed the atmosphere, Eleanor knew that something greater than themselves was taking place. It was as if they were merging their faith into a single unstoppable force, a vibrant pulse of collective hope. "Let us begin to pray together," Pastor Michael invited, his voice calm yet commanding. "Let every voice unite. Let every heart draw closer. What can our Father in heaven do for us today?" They began to lift prayers, voices intermingling, rising like smoke toward the heavens, creating an ascending symphony of need and desire, overflowing with love. Eleanor's heart raced as she remembered the new journey into miracles that lay ahead. She felt a growing assurance that they were indeed stepping beyond themselves into the divine. This moment would not only impact their lives, but echo into their community and beyond. But just as the fervor crescendoed, a silence swept through the room and everyone paused, feeling a shift. What was it they sensed? The air hummed, charged with the weight of divine anticipation. Eleanor felt a breathless whisper brush against her spirit, urging her to listen closely. What was God about to reveal? Perhaps it was not just their personal miracles they were to discover. So many questions hung in the air, thick with promise and expectancy. Would they be courageous enough to embrace whatever was coming next? The silence stretched, pressing against Eleanor's chest like a sacred weight. It felt as if time itself had paused to bear witness to what was unfolding. The anticipation in the room swirled around them, alive with the promise of something unexplainable, something divine. She could feel the air vibrating with expectant emotion, nervous energy tingling on her skin. Pastor Michael stood, eyes closed, listening intently. The stillness wrapped around him like a cloak, calming yet powerful. When he finally spoke, it was barely above a whisper. "What do you need, beloved? What is your heart longing for today?" Eleanor was momentarily caught in the depths of her own thoughts. What did she truly long for? Was it healing for her aching heart? Was it direction on the uncharted path of her life? She looked around, seeing faces etched with longing, and knew she wasn't alone. Each person vibrated with desire, each prayer resonating uniquely, yet collectively. Then, as if responding to that silent fight of hearts, the air shifted again, and a soft glowing light began to fill the corners of the room. It was almost as if heaven had cracked open just a little, spilling warmth and assurance into their midst. Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. It was undoubtedly a sign of divine presence. The light wrapped around her, offering peace yet stirring her spirit into a quiet frenzy. Samuel, emboldened by earlier revelations, stood again. "I have a testimony," he proclaimed, and the congregation turned their eyes toward him, rapt with attention. "I once felt invisible. I lost everything I believed mattered, but I stand before you now renewed." Each word fell like drops of sweet rain, nourishing the thirsty ground of shared longing. His sincerity pierced the moment, awakening voices that had yet to come alive. "I feel it," an older gentleman shouted, his hands rising, palms up, welcoming the light. "The Spirit is moving." Eleanor couldn't hold back any longer. "Lord, we are here, we are ready," she cried out, her voice trembling with urgency. "Do with us what you desire." One by one, voices accompanied hers, calling for renewal, healing, abundance. The atmosphere thickened, charged with hope, courage, and the warmth of shared love. Soon there formed a chorus. "We are here, Lord. We are ready." Then came a whisper that seemed to blanket them all, a whisper of divine intent. It beckoned her to pay closer attention. It was clear that their gathering was more than just a call for individual miracles. It was an awakening, a rallying cry to expand their vision beyond their immediate needs. Pastor Michael, feeling the surge of faith, directed their focus inward. "Let's take a moment," he urged, "to see beyond ourselves. What can we dream for our community?" Eleanor closed her eyes again. She pictured her neighbors, those who felt lost or downtrodden. What if their faith joined as one? What miracles could spring forth not just for them, but for the world outside those walls? Hope began to swirl within her, igniting a fresh spark of action. In that haze of prayerful unity, a girl's voice piped up, trembling yet strong. "What if we became the hands of miracles? What if we extended this love out there?" The murmurs of agreement followed like wildfire as new thoughts ignited hearts. Eleanor felt her spirit dance with excitement. Would their dreams really extend beyond these four walls? Could their faith lead them into the very fabric of their community, igniting change? What would it look like for each member to step into a miraculous role? As they prayed together, let their hearts resonate with an eternal truth. Divinely orchestrated miracles were not meant to remain contained. But in that sacred moment of visions coming alive, a sudden stillness fell, and she felt the unmistakable pull of a divine invitation. What would be asked of them now? What steps were they to take from this moment forward, and could they handle the weight of the miraculous path unrolling before them? With hearts racing and spirits entwined, they stood on the brink of something profound, drawn ever closer to the truth of their purpose. What would this new journey demand of them? Would they be brave enough to embrace it? As the final threads of anticipation wove into the air, a hush enveloped the church, amplifying the sacred energy coursing through the congregation. Just when it seemed like their voices, intertwined by faith, felt strong enough to summon miracles, Pastor Michael called for silence. He felt the divine presence among them like a gentle breeze on a summer's day. "Brothers and sisters," he began, his words trembling on the edge of holiness, "we are faced with a monumental opportunity. Our shared faith has already borne miraculous fruit in our lives, and now we must become vessels of that light in the world around us. What happens next is not just for us, but for every soul waiting to be touched by love." Eleanor's heart swelled. She could feel the unmistakable call to action, a resonance echoing within her spirit. She glanced at Jonah, whose bright eyes reflected a kind of wisdom that belied his youth. It dawned on her that healing was not merely about her or Jonah. It was a collective journey designed for the healing of the entire community. "Let's act!" Eleanor shouted, a sudden surge of passion propelling her forward, her voice carrying the weight of conviction. "Let's reach out to those who are still hurting. There are people waking up each day feeling alone, just like we once did. We can't hoard our joy, our blessings. We must share them." The room erupted with fervor, building like a crescendo. People began rising, fueled by the spirit of unity. "Yes, we can organize support groups, outreach programs, prayer chains, whatever it takes to let them know they're not alone." A bright-eyed young woman stepped forward, inspired by Eleanor's call. "We could start a community dinner, something to bring everyone together, where stories can flow and connections can be forged." "Yes!" exclaimed Mr. Thompson, his frail frame seeming to pulse with renewed vigor. "Let's show the community that we are one family. Love can create healing without boundaries." With excitement in the room escalating, ideas began flowing like a rushing river. How could they empower those who felt trapped? The congregation spoke of tutoring kids, offering meals, and visiting the elderly just to provide companionship. They envisioned becoming living testimonies of hope, carrying their miracles beyond the church doors. "Can we gather supplies and resources?" Another voice chimed in, resonating within the strong current of shared enthusiasm. "We can meet people on their streets, in their homes. It's time for us to take our faith outside." Eleanor's thoughts raced. What if we set up prayer stations throughout town? Anyone walking by could stop, share their burdens, and receive love and prayer. As the collective energy thrummed, Pastor Michael raised his hands, a smile stretched wide across his face. "In unity, we find power. In love, we discover strength. Together we shall manifest miracles beyond our wildest dreams, reflecting the love bestowed upon us." Eleanor raised her voice one last time, a plea wrapped in hope. "Let's make a pact. We won't let fear temper this fire within us. Each step we take will mirror the love we've experienced here. This isn't just an outreach. It's a declaration of deliverance. Cheers and applause ushered throughout the church, hearts synchronous in anticipation and commitment. With renewed purpose and bolstered unity, they knew they were no longer the same group that had gathered just days ago. They were an awakened community, bursting with life and eager to embrace the destinies intended for them. Jonah stood, reaching for his mother's hand, eyes wide with excitement. "Mom, can we make it fun? Invite everyone? Have games and stories? That way people will want to come." "Yes, Jonah," Eleanor laughed through tears, overwhelming joy spilling over. "We'll make it a celebration of love, a blessing to everyone who needs to know they belong." The church resonated with claps and joyous laughter, echoing through Willow Creek as hope reverberated like a drumbeat through every heart. They had ignited a movement, one that would ripple throughout their town and beyond. As they prepared to step into action, Pastor Michael led them in a final prayer, anchoring their hearts back into the divine. "Lord, we thank you for the miracles we have witnessed. We ask that you guide our hands and open doors for us to fulfill this mission. May your light shine through us today and always." Tears flowed, hearts were knit, and spirits soared high as the congregation shouted, "Amen," in collective conviction. It wasn't merely a church filled with faithful individuals, but a living entity bursting forth into the world, intent on radiating the divine love that had transformed them so profoundly. And deep within, Eleanor knew this was only the beginning. Every act of love would birth further miracles, heal the broken, and weave hope into the hearts of all they encountered. Would their willingness to share their light spark an even greater movement of divine healing across the land? One thing was for certain. Bolt by bolt, the chains of despair would be unlatched, revealing the pathways of healing, abundance, and undeniable blessings laid out by a loving God just waiting to unfold. As they walked from the church, illuminated by both the sun and the glow of anticipation, Eleanor took a deep breath, a sense of promise unfurling in her heart. They were the miracle manifesting in Willow Creek, and there was no turning back. Now, dear friends, this is your call to action. You need to subscribe now to see these life-changing testimonies unfold. This is the moment to show your support. Leave a like right away to feed the algorithm, helping us reach even more hearts. Comment below your reactions and how this story has touched you. Let your voice be heard. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this powerful manifestation. Together we carry this light, and together let's illuminate the world.